Hello, my name is Jason and welcome to Designcast. It's a podcast where I interview a wide range of guests and ask the question, how do you design education? Why is this important? Students all learn differently and need varied teaching methods to be successful. It is more important now than ever to accommodate and personalize education for all students as much as possible. I use my 25 years of experience as an educator to ask questions and to learn about the exciting things people are doing to provide for all students and their unique perspectives. Each episode, I chat with guests from all over the world, from classroom teachers, authors, consultants, and beyond. We chat around a range of topics that we feel are important right now. Will you join me in this journey to learn and grow together? If it's your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to check it out. If you like this podcast, please leave a review, rate, subscribe, share, and download from your preferred podcasting app. This helps the podcast get discovered by new listeners. Also, please use the hashtag Designcast when discussing your thoughts and feedback on your favorite social media platform. To connect with me, I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. So let's get on with the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Designcast, and I'm just so happy to have Dr. Darrin Peppard here with me today. Darrin, how are you this morning, man?
Man, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me in.
Yeah, thank you. I am just so excited that we were able to connect and chat about all things education. I'm so excited to hear what you have to share. And so, Darrin, for those people who are listening who are not familiar with your work, can you just give me a quick, 1 or 2 minute introduction to the kinds of things that
Yeah,
you have done to lead you to this journey to where you are now?
yeah, for sure. So I spent 26 years in public education and was probably the least likely person to go into education. When I finished high school, the last thing I would have ever told you I would do is ultimately be a middle school and high school teacher and a high school principal and a school superintendent. But as it turns out, that's what my calling ended up being. And I enjoyed every bit of it. Loved being a middle school teacher, loved being a high school teacher. I was a head basketball coach, I was a head tennis coach, and really enjoyed all of my time as a school and district level administrator. I identify, honestly, Jason, as a recovering high school principal. Probably my favorite role all the way through was being a high school principal. It was just an absolutely amazing experience. I got to be my daughter's high school principal, which was a really cool experience. And now I am a speaker and a leadership coach and run a small publishing company called Road to Awesome. We publish education books by educators for educators. So that's what I'm doing now. And I'm just a traveler on the road to awesome, man. That's who I am.
I love that, man. I think before we hit record, we were talking about our travel stories, and I think it's great that there's an
Yeah.
analogy there. I'm sure with that as well, and how
Yeah.
roads are
100%.
never what we always expect, right? So, tell me about this
Right.
work that you're doing. So you're a leadership coach. What does that
Yeah.
entail? Like who reaches out to you? How does that all work?
Yeah, so I work with leadership teams. I work with individual leaders, whether they're building level leaders or district level leaders. And I'll be honest with you, it goes back to my experience as a school leader. My first year as the building principal, so I had been the assistant principal in that same building, and I moved 40 feet down the hallway to the principal's office. And oh my goodness, I could not have been any less prepared for that job. And fortunately, my second year, we had a new superintendent, and he believed real strongly in leadership coaching, and he hired coaches for all of our building level administrators. And I mean, it just completely changed me. It took me from just being a firefighter, running from crisis to crisis to actually somebody who could lead the building. And so now when I work with individual leaders and leadership teams, we talk a lot about, number one, gaining that clarity around what really matters, what really is impactful, and what are the things that they and their school community value, so that we can make sure that we're aligning our behaviors, our time allocations, those types of things to be really intentional around doing the work that is ultimately going to impact student outcomes. So it's a lot of conversation. It is a lot of me asking questions and getting leaders to reflect deeply around what it is that they care about, how they are allocating their time, how they are focusing their efforts to ensure that, our teachers are successful, which means that our students are successful. So um, it's a wonderful process. It's something that I truly enjoy doing, and really, it's something that's very meaningful. So I'm grateful that I have
Mm.
the opportunity to do it, and that I have the experiences that I have that kind of put me in a position to support others. I'll tell you this. This is maybe the best way to describe it. Um, we are uniquely positioned to help the person that we weren't once were, and I was that school leader who was struggling, who couldn't get their head above water. And so my work is to be that lifeline to help those leaders keep their heads above water and to really be effective as school and district leaders.
So as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, I bet you have all kinds of crazy stories about stuff you've come across.
Oh yeah.
What's the what's the one thing you found to be probably the most common thing that comes up in your coaching sessions? Like, is there one thing that you just find all leaders or the majority of the leaders you work with either struggle with or are unaware of or just aren't equipped to do? Is there one thing or a group of things that you come across like that?
There's definitely a common theme, and I think a big part of it is just like in almost anything, we can get so caught up in the work that we lose sight of the work. I call it balcony level leadership. We have to be able
Mhm,
to
mhm.
step up on the balcony and really take a look at where are we focusing our efforts, because so many leaders, especially early career leaders, get kind of just tied up in trying to solve everybody's problems, because it's like that's what we believe being the leader means, is I have to have the answer to everything. I have to solve everybody's
Right.
problems. I have to be the smartest person in the room. And in reality, the very best leaders are the ones that can migrate their leadership from, you know, leading from the front, leading from the middle, and leading from the back. So understanding situational leadership and understanding that as a leader, the best thing we can do to help others is to help others learn how to solve their own
Mm.
problems, how to
Mhm,
be
mhm.
willing to take a chance on something, knowing that they have support. And yeah, so many of the leaders that I work with, they're just running frantic. They're just, again, they're chasing fires just like I used to. And they're not at the point where, they can actually step away from firefighting and actually leading in their schools. And a big part of that leading in your schools is you got to embrace that role as the instructional leader. You've got to be that person who's visible, who's in the classroom with your teachers, who's in those meetings with teachers. I mean, if you're going to be a data driven school, then as a leader, you need to understand that data. You don't have to live every second
Mhm.
of it, but you at least need to be in there and have a pulse on it. And all of that really comes back to one thing. I mean, you asked me for that one common theme, and that's time allocation. We
Oh,
we get
okay.
we get so lost sometimes, I think, in the all the stuff, right? I mean, as a school leader, there's a lot of stuff that has to get done, and
Yes.
it's like we chase stuff instead of leading. And it's not that the stuff doesn't need to get done, it does. But if we're really smart with how we allocate our time and focus on those things that really are impactful and step up on the balcony periodically and check on ourselves, okay, how am I doing? That right there is a game changer for leaders.
That's great. I kinda suspected something like that, but at the same time, you've made it much clearer to me, and, I think I've known a lot of really good leaders. I've been very fortunate to work with and work for people who were really gifted leaders, and I made it look effortless, and then I've also had the misfortune of working with folks who were out of their depth, and,
Yeah.
it's so different to see the way they try to handle things, and you're right, they were trying to solve everyone's problem or even sometimes created problems on their own
That's well
because they,
said. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so, so well, how do
Well,
you help, how do you help folks get through that?
I think the biggest piece is being kind of that third point perspective. So, um, when we have the opportunity to just, in essence, it's like, as a basketball coach, I would always go to the videotape. We videoed everything. We videoed practice, we videoed games, the whole thing. And that video is kind of that third point perspective. A kid might say, well, no, I did this in this situation. And I might remember it from the sideline as, no, I think you did this, but the tape doesn't lie. As a coach, I'm kind of like that videotape, where I have the opportunity to
Mm,
just provide, some perspective. And again, ask a
mhm,
lot of good questions. You know,
mhm,
um, so often leaders will, they'll reach out because they have unlimited access to me. I mean, we do regular check-ins and I'm on site and all that kind of stuff. But,
mhm,
I'll get
mhm,
a text message or a phone call and somebody's like, hey, I've got this situation, what do you think I should do? And I don't tell them what to do. I always answer that
mm.
question with a question. Tell me what you think you'd like to do, and let's really talk it through. So
Mm,
the best thing that a coach can do is provide perspective and ask good
mhm,
questions and
mm,
allow the individual to really think things through. Because
mm, mm.
when we make mistakes, it's because we don't think things through. We just react. And
Right.
having somebody who's been there, has done that, and has lots of experience in it, um, just simply asking, what do you think about this? What
Mhm,
do you think about this? Um,
mm.
and ultimately, yeah, there are times where something comes up. Yep, I've already lived that. After asking some questions, hey, I had a similar situation. This is kind of how I handled it. Here are the things that went
Right.
well. Here are the things that didn't go well. So, they
Mm.
have the opportunity to also learn from my experiences, not just have me ask them a bunch of questions. So, um,
Right.
it's, I mean, it's like anything else, man. It's relationships. I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm.
you build that trusting relationship between the coach and the leader, and all of a sudden it becomes, hey, I've got somebody who's a good sounding board for me. I've got somebody who
Right.
who I can reach out to and say, man, I'm really struggling with this. And,
Mm.
I think it helps to reduce the feeling of loneliness because, man, being the
Uh,
being the leader can be lonely,
yes, I
So
was just about to say that, Darren, how about how people, if you're first time leader, you don't realize how lonely it's gonna be,
oh man.
because of the critical friend factor and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
especially if you're promoted from within, right, where you've still got friends on the
Yeah.
ground, and now you're having to make decisions. It's a
Oh, that
very
is so
lonely
true,
place.
man.
So, how do you address
Yeah.
that when someone's struggling with that?
I heard it very early in my career. Actually, a principal that I worked under as an assistant principal had told me once that one of the best ways to look at yourself as the leader is you're not one of them, but you are one with them. Meaning a little bit deeper there, that
Mhm.
I can be around my teachers, I can be around my leadership team, but understand that in my role, there is just a touch of separation there. But don't create so much separation that you've lost touch with the people around you. Because
Mm.
I just said it a minute ago, but I'll say it again. I mean, that also is all about relationships. People don't
Mhm.
follow you
Mhm.
because of your title. They follow you because they believe in you. They follow you because
Mm.
they trust you, and they don't follow you when they don't trust you or when they don't have a chance to
Mhm.
get to know you or to see you as a human being. So certainly being one with your staff, there's a fine art there. There really is in,
Yeah.
in striking that balance. But at
Mm.
the same time, you don't want to be aloof or distant. I mean, you've probably
Mhm.
worked around
Mhm.
leaders like that too. I mean, I did as well, where you feel like, man, this person doesn't even care about me. They don't even know who I
Right.
am. I worked
Right.
under a superintendent as a teacher who, I'll be honest with you, anywhere in town that people went, if that guy was there, nobody even knew who he was. I mean, he was doing nothing
Mm.
to build
Mhm.
relationships. And,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
it's it is really striking a balance where, you do build those friendships and relationships, but yet
Mm.
maintain an understanding of, hey, I still have a role that I need to
Right.
fill.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Thank you. That's some wonderful advice because I think, again, there's such a balance to separate and not separate at the same time
Yeah,
when you're talking
it's
about
tough.
that. And so it's really hard. And a lot of people never get to that point. They go one direction or the other, unfortunately, and then they retire or they leave. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
So Darren, let's say you've been working with a person or a team for a while and you're working through these kinds of issues and then you want to get into something a little deeper with them, like creating
Yeah.
a more positive culture or moving towards some change. How do you
Yeah.
go about doing that so that it benefits students and the community?
So you just hit on one of the most important pieces. I talk about this in my book, the 6 things that I felt were the most important as a school leader. And number one is building that positive school culture and climate. And you go about that again, not to keep banging on this drum, but relationships and building trust and really being visible. But it's also about as a leader, what are you looking for, and how do you model that for others? I think this is another area sometimes that leaders will struggle, and ultimately it leads to some negative culture, which inhibits any kind of positive change, and that's just being clear on what do you care about. We talked about that a couple of minutes ago, but understanding and having that clarity around what really matters in the school is not just about allocating your time to it, but then it's also about making sure that as a collective school team, teachers, cafeteria workers, custodians,
Mm,
paraprofessionals, secretaries, I mean, everybody is focused on the same thing and we're looking for the same thing.
hmm.
I'll give you a quick story to help maybe explain this, and how that led to some pretty incredible change. The school where I ultimately became principal, when I first got there as an assistant principal, we were toxic. I don't think we knew it, but we were toxic. We were all about catching people doing things wrong. That was our important thing. Let's focus on what people do wrong, and then let's use punishment to gain compliance. And I don't think anybody ever spoke those words, but that's exactly what we were doing. And fortunately for us, there was a moment where kind of some clarity hit. We were in a really important staff meeting, and we were trying to solve what we thought were just the most important problems in education. What we were going to do about hats and what we were going to do about cell phones. And in that meeting, finally, somebody was like, "Oh my God, Darren, why does it always have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right?" And for me, it was kind of this moment of extreme clarity. And so I started to show up a little differently and started looking for the positives, started looking for those things that really mattered, the things we wanted to see. And over time as a school, we kind of migrated to really looking for the things we wanted to see. And then we recognized and rewarded and reinforced those behaviors, those academics, the attendance. I mean, those things that we were really wanting to see, they're there. We just had to be looking for them. And, that's something I push really hard with folks. It's just, what is it you're really looking for? Um,
Mm.
so I'm a Jeep guy. And, before I bought a Jeep, Jason, I'm telling you, I never saw a Jeep on the road. Now I see them everywhere. And
Everywhere.
I'm everywhere. Oh my gosh, everybody's got a Jeep. And it's not because I'm a trendsetter and bought a Jeep 9 years ago. Now everybody's got one. It's because that's what I'm looking for. That's why I see them. You know, I mean,
Right.
you know, if I was driving a different car, I'd probably see those all the time. You know, but what I use that analogy for this reason: what we are looking for, we will find. And so, as we're working to build positive culture, we have to train our mind and really focus on having a mindset around looking for the positive things. And then just
Mm,
really
mm,
recognizing and rewarding and reinforcing those things. Because when we do that, even our kids who most that we see, have challenging behaviors, those are attention getting behaviors. But if I can get attention through the positive things, it's a good chance I might start doing the positive things too. So
mhm,
it
mhm.
completely changed our school environment. And it took some time, But over over a period of time, our graduation rates went way up, academics went way up, attendance went way up because we were focusing on the positives. So,
Hmm.
when we're looking at any kind of a change initiative, change requires change requires a couple of key things. And the first thing that it requires, honestly, is trust. If our staff doesn't trust in the leadership, whatever change effective we try to or whatever change effect we try to put in place is not going to be successful. It requires positive culture. If we have a culture where people don't feel like they have a voice, where they feel, they don't feel seen or heard or valued or trusted, odds of a change being successful are pretty slim. And then the third thing is purpose. You know, so often, man, we're so bad at this in education. We chase the next shiny object. I actually just wrote a blog post about this. Um, and sometimes it's just simply for the sake of, ooh, look at this. That's really cool. But
Hmm.
if we're not clear on the purpose for that change, if we haven't given our staff a voice and help them to see and believe in this change, it's not going to be another successful change. Um, I worked in a district, Jason, where our curriculum director, every time he went to a conference, man, we cringed because we knew he was going to come back with something new. and and I am not exaggerating. I am seriously not exaggerating when I tell you this. We had 13 initiatives in the air all at once.
Oh
And
my
our
gosh.
teachers would just say, "Oh my gosh, Darrin, when do I just get to teach? I mean, I got to do this and I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this." It has nothing to do with the material that my students are supposed to know. I mean, we were trying to do so much. And every time he'd add
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
our assessment scores would go down. And he would say, "Well, it's just an implementation dip." And dude, it's not an implementation
Hmm.
dip. It was a culture gap.
Hmm.
Our teachers
Right.
saw no purpose in it. There was no connection. There was no buy-in. They had no voice. Even as school leaders, we were like, why are we doing this? But you know, I think I'm kind of chasing squirrels here on your question. But when
No, it's
we
actually okay.
when
It's
we are
great.
good, well, good. I'm glad. It's still early here. I've just finished a cup of coffee, and maybe it's starting to make some sense. But um, I just really feel strongly that having a culture where that voice is heard, having a culture where people feel like they're actually part of something special and they understand the direction, they
Mm,
own
mm,
the vision and the mission of the
mhm.
school, that leads to the opportunity for positive change. But when we just change for the
Mm.
sake of change, it's going to change, but it's not
Yeah,
going to change the way we want it to.
yeah,
That's for sure.
correct. That's amazing. I really appreciate you sharing that. That was extremely eloquent. Thank you, thank you for that. And
Wow,
I was
extremely
as you were
eloquent. I
talking,
like that. Yeah,
extremely eloquent. That was that first cup of coffee, man. It's jet
right
fuel.
on.
I know. So
Giddy up. Yeah,
but as I was told many, many, many years ago by a person in leadership that you can't turn a fully loaded ocean liner around in 5 minutes. It takes a long
yeah,
time, one direction, degree at a time. And it made me think about that as you were talking. And then I train a lot of teachers and educators from around the world. And the one thing I always say is that good teaching is good teaching, and that all these other things,
yes.
like you mentioned,
Amen.
are initiatives and things like that. They can be good in certain circumstances, but you need to be tested and true and make sure that your final outcome, these skills, these content, these concepts you want students to know, that they're actually still coming across, right? So I think it's
Right.
great that we have new things happening, but at the same time,
Yeah.
um, you know, we turned out okay. I'm not saying
Well,
that's a
yeah.
great
Yeah.
reason to do it that way, because I think kids learn
Yeah.
differently than we did. But at the same time, good teaching is good teaching, and teachers who are truly called to be teachers, you know, they're passionate. It's personal to them. It's not just a job, right? And so I think that's
Yeah.
what we have to remember as leaders, particularly, is that when we talk about something very businesslike, it's not always going to be very popular because people are very personally attached to what they do. And so that's
Yeah.
great, man. The work you're doing is awesome.
Yeah.
So, Darren, if
I
somebody
appreciate that.
wanted to do this, they let's say someone's been teaching a while or they've been a leader a while and they've decided they want to make a career shift. What kind of things do you do to prepare yourself to do the kind of job you're doing now?
Oh, man, that is such a good question. I think it starts small. For me, I made the jump full time into this work in 2021, in July of 2021. But I had actually started doing this in 2018. So I think a big
Mm,
part of it is get your feet into the water a little bit and discover what it is that you really enjoy and start to get a little bit of experience doing that work. My first leadership coaching contract was, well, I'm certain it was 2018, 2019, just working with one high school principal and, spending a few days during the course of that year on site with that person, regular check-ins and some of that kind of stuff. And the same thing is true with the speaking piece. You know, find every opportunity you can to speak. Being on
yeah.
podcasts is a good example.
Mm,
I mean, it's an
yep.
opportunity to share your message, to just kind of talk about the things that you're really passionate about, and it also gives you an opportunity to continue to refine that message. Um, you know, again, a
Absolutely.
broken record, it's a relationships game, and
Sure.
lean on those people who and don't expect a bunch of people from the outside to just all of a sudden start calling because you throw your shingle out. You begin
Absolutely.
by talking with people,
Yes.
continue to
Yes.
grow your platform, um, and continue to put out really good content. I mean,
Correct.
I'm a podcaster like you, Jason. I have a podcast that drops every Sunday, and I have a blog that drops once a week. It's a lot of it is, you have to build your brand, you have to build your reputation,
Absolutely.
and you know, over time, your message becomes really clear, and that's probably
Mm,
about the point in time when you're ready to step out and do that full time.
sure. Yeah, I have a hard time sometimes explaining to younger people that you don't become a YouTuber overnight, right? Like that
No,
the people you see who were successful, they have been in the groove for years, creating and
yes,
working and failing and picking themselves up. And I mean, I think about in podcasting, um, getting 100 episodes, there's very, very, very few podcasts in your niche that get to that point, right? And
right,
it's really important that you keep pushing that, like you said, you refine that message. It's not like you're going to wake up one morning and everyone knows who you are, even though I think they should.
right,
It's not always the case, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
I totally
yeah,
agree,
that's the
but I
truth.
think it does depend a lot on this cross promotion type stuff and this
Yes.
collaboration more than anything else with each other. And so I think it's great that we're both in this community and able to support and celebrate each other. And it's great just chatting with you, man. This is just so much fun. I know we could go all day, but I have
Oh yeah,
one question to ask you, Darren, that I've asked everybody all season, and that is, if you could travel back in time, what would you tell your younger self?
man, that is such a good question. If I could go back in time, oh man, I'm going to say I'd go all the way back to when I very first started teaching, and I would probably tell myself the same thing I've said 5 or 6 times already in this episode, and that is, never lose sight of the fact that this is a relationship business. We are in the people business. That's what we do. Our product is a human being. Period. And the work you're going to put into them, you're really pouring into their heart, and never ever forget that. If you can focus on building relationships and be successful with connecting on a human level, the content, the leadership, all of that stuff will take care of itself on its own. If you can just simply remember that we are
Mm.
in the people business and it's all about a human experience.
That's Fine words. Thank you, Darrin, for sharing that. And I know that people who will follow behind us will appreciate the wisdom that you've shared with
Yeah,
that,
I
man. I
appreciate
really
that.
appreciate that. So listen, Darrin, if people want to get in touch with you and learn about either your books or connecting with you for whatever reason, what's
Yeah.
the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'll give you two. So the website is roadtoawesome.net, and there's a contact us link on every single page. You sign up for our newsletter. You can learn everything that you need to learn about Road to Awesome on our website. If you're a social media person, at Darrin M. Peppard on every platform. You can find me on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm sure I'm leaving some out.
YouTube,
Voxer.
man.
I
I've
mean,
been watching
I'm
your
all over the
YouTube
place.
videos.
YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. YouTube. Yeah. I'm all over the place. So,
Well, congrats for grabbing your name on all of those platforms because that's not always easy to be able to get your name
oh, that's
for
true.
all of those.
That is true.
So good job on that one. You got in there early. That's awesome. Well, listen, Darrin, this is awesome. And I have just tremendously enjoyed connecting with you. And I want to wish you the best moving forward. And I can't wait to connect with you again. So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate this. It was really great to have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with you. And I definitely look forward to, extending the opportunity to bring you on to the Leaning into Leadership podcast. And we'll take this conversation from another angle.
I will make sure that those are all linked in the show notes. Don't worry. Thank you so much,
Right on.
Darrin. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of Designcast. Again, I'm Jason. I am the creator and host and one-man band when it comes to this podcast. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it, and please share it with your colleagues and friends and help me network with those folks who you think will benefit from listening to this podcast. If you own a company or you have connections where you would like to partner with me in this podcast, whether it be sponsorship or product reviews or any other possible services, please reach out to me. My contact information is in the show notes, and I cannot wait to hear from you. I only do this because I love talking to people and I love sharing my passion with all the listeners. So if you are interested in possibly being a future guest, please reach out and get in touch. I can't wait to hear from you. I really want to hear about how this podcast and its guests are helping you become better or to enrich your lives. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, be good to one another.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.